How's everybody doing? Welcome to the Realm. I'm Rich.
I'm Jen.
I'm Rob.
Amy.
I'm Brian.
All right, and Gina is feeling a little bit under the weather today, so she will not be joining us. So Gina, get well. This episode, we're gonna kind of dig back into a little bit of historical files, so to speak, of the Ashmore Estates in Ashmore, Illinois, which is a site that myself, Amy, and Rob did an investigation on last year in August. It is about 265 miles away from our current location of Southeast Wisconsin. So it's about a 4-hour drive. So we all took a drive down there last summer. I'm going to kind of read a little bit of the history for Ashmore Estates. If you go to their website, they have a nice little website set up that you can set up investigations, purchase souvenirs. They have a calendar of events, and this history that I'm going to read from there, you can find there as well if anybody wants to visit that site.
What is that site?
It is ashmoreestates.net.
Thank you.
Is the name of the address, and it is Ashmore is hosted by Robin Terry, who is the owner, and I can't say enough about him and his staff. They were very friendly, very down to earth. I mean, very forthcoming with helping us with any information on the location or things we should try. Great group of people. If you get the chance to go there, I can't say enough that you should do it. If it's something that's on your bucket list, I don't know that it was on any of our bucket lists when we went to go do it, but it was a place that I think some of us were familiar with. It has been on television before with different ghost hunting shows, Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures has been there, and Destination Fear, I think, was the last group that was there. I think they've been there twice. And I also find it interesting that when locations come up on the television shows like Farrar Schoolhouse in Iowa, or this one, Ashmore Estates, or numerous other ones, if we get the chance to go, I like to compare kind of the experiences or evidence that we get to what they find. And also I've found it helpful if you find out what other groups have been to locations before, if you look at some other evidence review or their experiences, it's interesting sometimes of how you can find parallels in what you find and what they have found. And it's really interesting. And I think this location is the same. I'm going to dig right into the history here, and then after that we'll talk about it. And if Jenny or Brian have any questions or comments they want to make, they can do that as well, because I know that I found some of my evidence that I had from that. So we'll kind of go over what I found and what our personal experiences were, because I know we had several. So it was a fun weekend. I'll say that it was fun. So let's dig right in. The history of the Ashmore Estates begins in 1857. So in 1857 until 1869, the Coles County Poor Farm, as it was called, was located in the Charleston Township near a small town of Loxa, Illinois. In 1870, the county purchased 260 acres from A.N. Graham in section 35 of Ashmore Township for a new farm, which sat astride the Indianapolis and St. Louis Railroad. This small timber and brick building was constructed by H.B. Truman and was the first to sit on this property that we're talking about. It was 38 by 58 feet wide and had 2 stories with an attached kitchen. Many of the residents, or as they were called, inmates, died at the farm, and the county maintained a small cemetery somewhere north of the grounds, which I will say we were told about, but we were not able to investigate when we were there, which was a little disappointing. But there is that cemetery located on the grounds, and on the top floor, I believe it was the 3rd floor, they do have a wall dedicated to the people that are buried in that cemetery with their names and everything. So we were able to look at that, and if there was any research you want to do or we could have done, we had all that information there for us. In 1879, Joshua Ricketts superintendent of the county farm at the time had recorded 32 deaths out of the roughly 250 inmates who had stayed at the farm between 1870 and 1879. Another pauper cemetery established a few years later still exists south of Route 16 and now contains the graves of between 60 to 100 people. The Board of State Commissions of Public Charities visited the poor farm in 1902. As for the condition of the mentally ill at the farm, they wrote, "There is no special provisions for the insane. None are locked up or in restraint." By 1911, the Auxiliary Committee of the State Board of Charities condemned the almshouse for its vermin-infected walls, rough floors, small windows, and improper ventilation. It was reported that flies swarmed everywhere and were especially noticeable on the poor food preparation for dinner. In January of 1915, the Almshouse Committee received bids for the construction of a new fireproof building at the location. So now we move on to the next chapter of the Ashmore Estates property. In 1916, the building contract for a new almshouse was granted to J.W. Montgomery in March for $20,389. And this cornerstone was ceremoniously laid on May 17th, 1916. A full-time caretaker and his family took turns living in the almshouse and the white farmhouse that formerly sat on the property. Now, I will post pictures to go along with this story when we post it. I do have a picture of that cornerstone. I did take when we were there, so has all that, the date and everything on that. Coles County
Why did
sold
they have inmates in the first place?
What's that?
Why did they have inmates?
They
there
didn't
in the
have
first
inmates.
place?
That's what they called the people that stayed there.
Why did they call
consider
them inmates?
That's just what they called them, was inmates.
Was it people who worked there? Were they like farmhands?
It was more it was a poorhouse basically. So it was for people
Okay.
that is what it was. So it wasn't,
Okay.
but what it turned into, as you're going to find out, it turned into be more of a insane asylum, poorhouse. People that society kind of pushed away is what ended
It was
up
like
there.
a flop house. People
Kind of,
would
basically,
wind
yeah.
up there and then just stay.
Exactly.
Kind of, but didn't some of the farms go up, the belly up because of the depression and
Mhm.
Okay.
where they would go because they
Right.
would lose everything.
But yeah, and you're right, Brian. Yeah, they would work on the farm, and a lot of the inmates, which is what they're calling them, which they were just residents of at the time. They did work the property for farming and other things and upkeep. That was what the main goal was.
Okay.
But for some reason, and I think you find out a lot of stories from back in that time, that era. A lot of these, I've seen it and I've heard it many times, that the people that are there are always lumped together and they get called inmates or whatever,
So was it they were able to live there and eat and have shelter as
Mhm.
long as they worked on the
Mhm.
farm? Is that
Pretty much, yeah.
how that worked?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. That's what it was set up to be. Okay. In 1959, the Coles County sold the Almshouse to Ashmore Estates. That corporation opened the building as a private psychiatric hospital by the same name. In October of 1964, after only 5 years in operation, the psychiatric hospital closed down because of debt. So the psychiatric part of this, which was the Ashmore Estates in 59, only lasted to 64 before they had to close down because of debt. The institution reopened a year later in 1965, but changed its focus from a private facility to one that accepted patients from state mental institutions. By 1968, the shelter care facility housed 49 residents, including 10 of those residents that had epilepsy. Paul Swinford and Galen Martine purchased the institution in July of 1976. They invested over $200,000 into the construction of a modern addition onto the building, which you'll be able to see in our photos. And we saw when we were there. You can tell the difference between the old original building that was there and the addition. It's basically all brick is what it is. And so it's real easy to tell. And construction began in 1977, but it was not finished until the 80s for that addition. Once the addition to Ashmore had been completed, the rest of the building was brought up to code. And as they say, the institution's future appeared brighter. Remember that part. It appeared brighter. In February of 1986.
Or shadowing.
Shadowing, yeah. Paul Swinford entered into a limited partnership with Peoria-based company known as Convalescent Management Associates Incorporated to help manage the institution's finances. The departments of public aid and public health dragged their feet over the issuance of proper licenses and certifications for nearly a year, leading Swinford to file for permission from the Illinois Health Facility Planning Board to close the facility. At the time, Ashmore Estates' financial losses exceeded $1.5 million.
Yowza.
Yeah. So, where the future appeared brighter, it kind of went downhill fast. And all of a sudden, it wasn't so bright. By the end of April in 1986, all the residents had been transferred to area homes, and Ashmore Estates closed its doors. So that was the last time that incarnation of the building existed. In 1998, a resident of Sullivan paid $12,500 for the property and announced that he planned. Yeah, think about that. Just in the late 70s, they invested over $200,000 to that building, and now in 1998, it's being purchased for $12,000 for the property. And then he announced he planned to renovate the building and turn it into his home. So now he's going to turn this huge building into his home, is what he had planned. However, continuous vandalism prevented him from ever realizing his plans. That was in 1998. Fast forward now to August 2006. Scott Kelly purchased Ashmore Estates from that said person, Arthur, and began renovating. To finance the project, the Kellys offered flashlight tours of the interior. To discourage trespassers, they erected signs and moved onto the property. They opened a haunted house October 13, 2006. In the off season, Scott was his name, offered overnight stays in the building. So 2006 is when they started figuring, okay, it needs to be used for something else. I think if my memory is correct, which it probably isn't because it sucks, but I'm going to go anyway. I believe Ghost Hunters was one of the first ones to investigate that. And I believe that is the person, this Scott Kelly was the person that was their client. And if memory serves me, I want to go back and watch that episode, but I can't seem to find it anywhere that I can watch it. It was pretty much it was a mess, if I remember right. It was not how it is today. So it was a mess. And if you go back and, as I was saying, if you look at their the website ashmorestates.net, they have some photos, but if you also just go like on Google it and Google photos, you'll see photos of this building from way back when, and you'll see it in that around that 2006 timeframe. You'll see the place is a mess. And if you go there today, it's totally different. 2013, Ashmore Estates was hit by a fierce storm, and with wind speeds of 80 to 100 miles an hour. It suffered heavy damage. The roof was blown off, and a lot of the support gables were destroyed. So shortly after the new owners took over the property, they made plans to restore the building to its former glory. So basically, they were forced into having to make some repairs in order to move forward because it was roof. As George Carlin said, roof flew off. Pressure, oof, gone.
Roof flies off.
It's not good. Now, enter May 3rd, 2014. That's when Robin and Norma Terry, the current owners that I spoke of earlier, nice people, were very friendly. They actually stay a lot of the time on the property, and they have done a lot to the building. It's amazing what they've done. If you look through the pictures, what they've done. It's still an old building, but they've done a lot to it to try to put put things in perspective when you walk through and you look at some of the pictures that we took, or some of the pictures that are there of the broken bathtubs, or some of the old furniture that they've put in different places. It gives you an idea of what the place was like. And I'm going to say that they went through and they replaced a lot of windows, because you'll see a lot of pictures where all the windows are broken out, boarded up. They went through, with new windows in there. They put a new roof on the building. They did a lot to it, and a lot of upkeep on the outside of the property as well. Even when we were there, he was there during the day with a tractor doing yard work, just doing a lot of cleanup and trying to keep up with the thing, because they do a lot of charity things, and they do a lot of events with kids. And I mean, it's quite amazing what they do there. So this isn't just a ghost hunting or paranormal place to go. They do a lot of things there for the community and for helping people out, and it's really good to see. So now let's move on and let's talk a little bit about what we think we know.
What about the employee that was there
Yes.
that
We'll talk
passed
about that.
away?
Yes. Hannah?
Yes.
Yes. There was one of the tour guides that worked there. Her name was Hannah. She unfortunately passed away in a automobile accident in August of 20. Very sad story. She was very well loved. And if you go on their site and go to some of the evidence or comments from people, it was before that had happened. And a lot of the comments are about how great of a tour guide she is and how they loved the tours that she gave. And like I said, that was like in 2018. So it was before she passed. But just reading that stuff before that, besides being a little eerie, I mean, because you're reading that before any of that stuff happened, you can tell just what kind of person she was by reading that. And we got that feeling, at least I did. I'm sure Rob, Amy agree. Just when you're there, you get that feeling of how much they cared about her. They actually have a room on the second floor
Yes.
that is called Hannah's room. That was the reasoning behind that. They said was that it was her favorite room to investigate in. They have a light on a nightstand next to a
Set up
bed.
just like a bedroom.
Yep, set up just like a bedroom. They keep the light on all the time. The light stays on all the time.
It's interesting because the third floor is pretty much not set up at all, and then all of a sudden there's this beautiful bedroom.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they said that people get a lot of EVPs, or they get a lot of activity in that room or near that room. I don't think that we did at any point when we were there. I know we heavily investigated that area. I think that that was a surprise to us, I think, when we got there, because we didn't know that part of the history of the building. So when Ashley, I believe it was, took us around the first night when we got there, we went there end of August. We were there for Friday, a Saturday, and a Sunday, which is normally how we do our investigations when we would go to an out of state place. So it was a 2.5 day type trip. We got there, got the tour as is usual, and then we got set up and started trying to figure out what we wanted to do first and who's going to split up and do whatever. There is a boiler room that is there, and there's a spirit of a gentleman named Joe who is said to haunt the location, primarily in that boiler room. They say he was a handyman. He kind of did work around there, but some of the stories we got from Ashley, I believe it was, when she took us around, or from other people there, that he was more of a resident there, but he liked to help out. He was a great guy, apparently. Well, one night, and do I have the date? I don't have the date on his death. I looked and I didn't see it. He was hit by a train. Apparently he went to town, which Ashmore is in the middle of this location is in the middle of nowhere. There's farm fields everywhere around. You have to drive either east or west to get to the nearest bigger town. Apparently was hit by a train. Nobody knows why or how. And somehow he ended back up at Ashmore. And that's where he passed away. There's lots of speculation. Obviously, nobody knows exactly what happened. Am I telling that correct, Rob? I mean, am I remembering that correct?
My understanding, yes. He got hit by the train and going back and forth from Ashmore Estates to town. And yeah, there was a mystery as nobody knows why. He's made the trip several times. He wasn't known to be a drinker, and however it happened, it happened.
I thought I heard that he didn't die right away though, right? Did they brought him back?
Yes, they brought him back.
That is correct. Maybe,
yes.
Yeah, that's right.
But I mean, it wasn't, he didn't make it. So he was alive when he got back to Ashmore, but he did pass away soon after that. And that's why they believe his spirit is haunting the boiler room area, because that's where he liked to spend a lot of his time. Because as I said, they described him as a handyman. He liked to help out everybody there for, odd jobs, stuff like that. The other prominent ghost that they talk about is a little girl named Elva Skinner. Now, she died in the 1880s in a fire in the original, way back in the beginning of the story, like I was telling you, in the 1800s, in the first rendition of Ashmore, when it was just the wood building, the smaller building before it was rebuilt. The story went, she got too close to a stove and her nightgown or whatever caught on fire and she ended up passing away. So she's another one of the prominent spirits that they tell you you're going to encounter at this location. There is another location in the building, the twins room, they call it.
Yes.
I don't know that anybody has actually, when you look up any of the history or anything, I didn't find anything particular on who they were or that they're haunting the location. I think over time, that's come across as that's something that happens. They have a room that's set up in one of the corners, and the room is very outlandish and very decorative, has toys everywhere, and it's more set up for like you would think of like if they were the kids of maybe the caretakers type thing. It was definitely
pictures of them.
Yes, there's pictures of the girls. I don't have the pictures. I'm sure they're somewhere. They supposedly liked the guys. I didn't have any personal experiences.
Yeah, they
with
didn't
them.
like me either.
We tried. There's like different puzzle books and blocks and you name it in that room. And
I remember somebody rearranged something.
Yes.
After I was in there, and I'd like, oh my.
Yeah, and so those are three of the most common spirits that they tell you you're going to encounter there or to be aware of.
Now, let me ask you this, because we walked around the grounds, and I thought that the cemetery wasn't on the property, that you had to drive to it.
That was a different one.
Okay.
That was a different one. There's a cemetery, if you remember, and I have pictures of the backyard or the grounds where that big spider tree is. There's a big tree in the backyard that they tell you that if you go out there, it's supposed to be real spooky and it's creepy and you're going to hear chanting and you're going to hear different things. And all I heard was me screaming because there's freaking spiders in the tree. And I was like, oh no, I'm out of here.
And the bats.
Yeah, we'll get to the bats later, Rob. I know that's one of your favorite parts. Unfortunately,
this place has got a lot of history, and it sounds like a lot of that history was kind of dark. I mean, you're talking about the people who were alienated, and then you're talking about people who had mental disabilities, and the environment was horrible, and all the flies and everything else. Is there a count of how many people died in this building? Do we have any idea what the death toll has been throughout the years?
Well, originally when they had talked about in the beginning, they had recorded at least 32 deaths out of the roughly 200 inmates that were there in the early years. And I think if it said that there was actually 60 to 100 persons is what it says. There's a site on Route 16, which I believe is the site that Rob's talking about. There's another location that we passed as you leave Ashmore that actually Robin was telling us about. That's supposed to be kind of creepy, but we never did make it over to that location. But it says that one contains graves of between 60 to 100 people. So you got to figure there's at least 100 and 132 people, 100, total, probably more than that. I mean, you're right. Bad living conditions, but I think in the grand scheme of things, when you hear the horror stories of some other locations, of testing and different things they've done on people, I don't know that I remember any. It was a psychiatric hospital for a short period of time. I don't think it was one long enough for them to do any type of horrible things to people. I think it was just the time, the 1800s and stuff. I think it was just, that's what made it so bad, and it wasn't modernized enough. And you hear about like Trans-Allegheny, you hear about Waverly Hills, you hear about all those places, and about how people were horribly treated. I don't know that we heard that people here were horribly treated. I think it was just the situation. I don't think that people were out to harm anyone. So I mean, yeah, as bad as the stories are and as bad as the living conditions were, I'm sure that it wasn't an isolated account, that this was the only place that was like that. And I don't know that there was any wrongdoing or people being hurt on purpose or being tested on. If I'm wrong, someone can let me know I'm wrong and correct me on that. But I don't remember being told that when we were there that was the type of thing that happened. The first night, I mean, when you're a paranormal investigator, Brian, you're gonna learn this as you progress with us. Everybody wants to investigate at night, and most of the reasoning for that is it's quieter. There's not as much activity outside, so you get less contamination. But the first thing that Robin said to us when we were outside was, you guys should investigate during the day. He said a lot of stuff happens during the day. And I've heard a lot of that just recently on a lot of the podcasts I listen to, and even going back to some stuff at 4R and listening to some of the recordings I had during the day, that at the time I questioned as to who the hell was in that building doing all this noise. It makes me question to that maybe it wasn't somebody that was making noise. Maybe it was something else. But I think it wasn't the first thing we had. We had some interaction with another individual that was there that thought something had happened. But I think the first thing we got was, I had an EVP from the second floor. It was during the day. It was in the morning. We woke up. I like to go roam around a little bit in the mornings after we wake up, because it's kind of quiet, and I kind of like to just walk and see what I can hear, see what I can see. There was a group of us that were sitting there, and we were just talking, and didn't hear anything at the time. So going through the day thinking, man, there's nothing going on here. And before we started investigating for the evening, I started listening to my recorder, and I had a little girl say hello in the recorder. And I'm real easy to read when I'm listening to my recorder. Everybody can tell when I found something. So the minute I heard it and I had my headphones on, everybody was like, oh, wait a minute. So he found something. So I let everybody listen to it. Rob and Amy, you guys heard it, right? You guys remember hearing that? I think I have that stuff on my other computer. So if I do, I'm going to submit the things I have that I personally found to Gina, so she can put something together. So when we do this episode, people can hear it. It's clear. It's pretty clear. It's a little girl saying hello. I did not ask for a hello. I did not say hi. I wasn't doing any of that stuff. It's the usual questions. If you're here, what's your name? How old are you? What are you doing here? Why? Those type of things, which are the common questions I think we ask. And somehow I got a hello. So going back to some of the other things we've talked about on this podcast, it makes me wonder, what was I here? Is it residual? Is it just something that happens all the time? Was it intelligent? Was it trying to get my attention? Or we can go way off the rails here and talk about our alien stuff. Could that be a different dimension reaching out? Could it be something on the other side that's trying to talk to me and I just can't see it? Maybe there's, maybe that veil is right there. that's something we can go to depth later. I mean, we talked about that a little bit before, but it's just after you hear that and then you start, first you're excited to hear it, but then you start to process it and think about it. And those are the kind of things I was thinking about is it residual? Does it just happen randomly every now and then? Because I didn't say hello. I wasn't prodding for something to say hello to me.
Maybe they just wanted to say hello.
Yeah. And I wish it would have been more of a disembodied hello. Cause I think then maybe at the time we would have maybe started trying to get more interaction out of it, but being we didn't hear it, I think it was pretty close to the end of one of the sessions we were doing because we were just sitting there talking, which seems to happen quite often to a lot of us. I think is we get a lot of stuff when we're just talking and not even trying to get anything. Something just pops into your conversation. I've had it happen more often than not, which I think is pretty cool because they're just always there. They're listening. Sometimes it makes sense, but a lot of times the stuff just doesn't make any sense what they try to tell you, which puts me on that path of, is it just residual? And we just happen to be there to catch it at that time. I don't remember what the next thing was that we had happen. Did you guys have any EVPs or anything that popped up on any of those recordings that you can think of?
Now, a lot of my recordings are no longer in my possession, and I didn't go through most of them.
Okay.
I didn't really ever feel like I had any experience. I really was disappointed because I know that there was people had experienced this group in Joe's boiler room.
Yeah.
And I really tried hard I did a lot in Hannah's room investigating, but I feel like I just never, the most experiences I had were in the room that we were staying in, and which wasn't paranormal. And outside of the spirit box session, which was actually
I have
interesting. And because also I remember that you talked about that poster that showed some of the grave sites.
Yeah.
And that some of the names that came up randomly kind of came up were names that were also on that poster. And if I remember, they weren't really common names.
Right. Now, I don't remember, Amy, if we did the spirit box session before or after you had that experience in that old lunchroom area. I think it was after it. I don't remember, but
it was after, because I thought it was the second night that we did the spirit box.
I think it was.
Yep. And so we had that experience during the day. I was sitting in the old lunchroom, which is where they say a lot of stuff happens there. And one of the things they talked about was someone, I think, throwing a pebble like throwing pebbles, something like that. Yep. So a lot of times during the day we split up and we'll go to different rooms. And I mean, sometimes it's just to be like, just to kind of gather ourselves and just kind of go off on our own, because we do spend a lot of time together and, just kind of hang out and get the vibe. And so I was sitting in the lunchroom, and I was there quite a long time, and the building is pretty quiet, like pretty quiet.
Yeah. Yep.
And so, and also I don't get freaked out easy. I'm pretty much, I'm a skeptic, and it takes a lot for me to feel weird or get weird about stuff, or, so I don't get surprised very often. So I seriously sounded like someone threw a rock at me, and it made me jump. And I think, like I said, it was very quiet. I couldn't really hear anybody else talking or anything. And I went and then got you. I was like, ooh, I'm getting out of here. And then I got you, and I was like, come back in here, let's sit in here for a minute. So when we sat in there, right? And it happened
Yep.
again, didn't it? Yep. So
Yep.
I know we looked around. We didn't see anything on the floor. There is bits where the ceiling maybe might be coming down a little bit, but there was nothing on the floor.
It was a tin roof, metal roof, and above it, mortar was coming out of the bricks. And so
it didn't sound like that though. We
I know,
we went outside.
that was my
outside.
issue. Maybe I'm a little jealous because I didn't get any experiences, but
I don't know.
with the amount of pieces of mortar that were on top of that roof,
It didn't sound like that. It
no,
didn't sound like a tinny sound. It sounded like
hit the floor.
concrete hitting a
It
concrete
bounced.
floor.
Sounded like it was inside the room with us because it
Like
sounded
right
like it
behind
hit
us.
the
acoustics and echoes
because it was an
inside of a
linoleum
drum.
floor, you know, an old like tiled linoleum floor. Probably had asbestos in it and everything else that whatever. But
Maybe we were hallucinating.
well, I don't know. I heard it. I mean, when you first of all, let's set the scene. That back area is an area that the very first thing when we walked in, Ashley told us she had an experience just earlier that week where something rushed at her
Mhm.
and
inside that room, that very
Inside that
room,
one
because
back room.
they talked about that there had been several Shadow Man sightings in that room, and that he was not a nice guy. That he would seem to be more deliberately trying to scare people as opposed to just being a casual apparition.
Right. But the problem with that is we weren't in that room. We were in the actual other side of it. We weren't when we heard the rock thrown when I was in there or something, we were not in the room that had the tin roof. We were actually in the other side. So I don't think that if it was something hitting the roof, we would have heard it like it was by us. It didn't sound like that. I agree with you 100%, Rob. Being the fact that there's that tin roof and that there was stuff falling on it, that you gotta say that a lot of the noises were that. But I don't believe that some of the things that Amy and myself heard in there were coming from that, because it just sounded like it was right there in that room with us. And it sounded like it was hitting the floor, and it sounded like it had force because you could hear it skip. If it was just dropped, you would hear it fall and drop. And it sounded like it was bouncing, like somebody had threw it. So,
And it was like big, like
Right.
whatever was getting thrown was big, like you'd expect to see it on the floor.
right now, paranormal or not, we can't prove or disprove it. We didn't see anything. There was a little mouse running around in one of the rooms, like our base camp room. So, I mean, you know, take it for what it is, but it's an experience that Amy had, and I was able to back it up as well, that it didn't sound like it fit the room. So, I mean, I don't think it's anything that we went anywhere with, and you know, we didn't run out screaming and waving our hands. There's a ghost anywhere. It was just something weird. It was just something weird that happened.
Bats.
Right. It did make my heart beat a little quicker though.
Well, like you said, it's so quiet in that
Right.
that
It really
whole
made
building.
me jump, and I kind of looked around and I looked on the floor, and then I was like, maybe I'll go get somebody really quick.
Yeah,
One of the best things about investigating there is that we're in the middle of nowhere,
right.
and everything was so quiet. It was perfect.
Except for Saturday night
For
races.
investigating.
Except for the Saturday night races when we were going on, you could hear them.
Oh,
Remember that dirt track?
yes, I forgot all about that.
But I mean, now we were talking about the Estes method spirit box that we did the second night. Now I'm going to read off some of the stuff that came across while we were there, because like I said, I found my notes, some of my notes that I had. Now I know when I first told this to Brian and Danny, when it happened, they were skeptical, because they said, just like anybody else would, did you know these names before you put the headphones on?
Yes,
Now
that's exactly what we said.
Now I'm going to ask you, Brian, after doing this Estes method at the last location we did, and you had those on, you could not hear anything anybody was asking you, correct?
No, you can't hear anything that anybody is asking you. So for that, yeah, you're completely blacked out. The only thing that Danny and I always think about with that is that the more you know about the location you're in, the more you're already tainted with what you're going to hear. So if you don't know anything and you start throwing stuff out, it gives it more validity.
Right. But to throw it out at the exact same time when someone asks a question, how do you know with those headphones on that that's the question that's being asked? I mean, you might know the information in your head.
That's
But
true. You have no sense of timing
exactly
of what somebody is saying.
So
Right.
for some of these answers to come across was weird because of the timing is how I saw that. And when we started, we did the spirit box session. It was probably, we actually did it for almost an hour in that room. We did it in a couple other places in the building, but we did it for about an hour in there because we all thought that might be one of the rooms that probably felt the creepiest. There was a creepy mannequin head and all other stuff going on there. And from the experience that Ashley said she had and an experience that Amy had, you know, we thought, well, let's do it in here. Let's see what we get. We started the session and there was some noises in the room. We got a I am here when we were asking questions. We got to get out. We did get an Elva, which I remember at the time was very odd. That why would she spit out the Elva name when we were asking questions? And at that time, I mean, out of all the names, I mean, like Brian says, well, you already knew that name. But when we're asking the questions, I know when we asked it, the only reason I wrote it down is because it was relevant, because we were asking who's here or give us a name, things like that. And that's what came out at that time. We also got an Amy when Amy was in the room, which was odd. Yeah, it wasn't Rob. So those were some of the things that we had got on that spirit box session that I wrote down. And I only wrote down a couple of them because obviously you get other things that pop out that don't make any sense, which you guys are well aware of. I mean, we've sat through them before.
See, now when you get the name Elva and it's with who's in here, that's where I would go. If you didn't know the name Elva going into that, you might have heard Elvin. You may have heard a litany of other names that you wouldn't attribute to it. And when you have, you know, the timing of again, you can't hear the questions, but that's such a specific name that it's not one that you would think of. Even if you have the cans on and you're listening and you're hearing things, that would it would have to be very clear to get that name out that way, to get it out properly.
Well, you
so
have it on.
That's the only, I mean, that's the only thing with that it's hard because that's a specific name.
And when you have those on, you're not getting clear crystal things all the time that you can actually put something together like that.
Right. It also wasn't a random name. It was in response to a question.
Right.
And if I remember correctly, there wasn't a delay.
Okay.
That was pretty quick.
Okay.
Yes.
So
that's where when we did your first spirit box session like that, was just nothing really happened and stuff was sporadic, or even responses came, you know, with quite a bit of time. This one was particularly interesting, all of them there, because responses came quickly. And, there was, of course, there was some rubbish, but some of it was just so on. And when that name came through, because, you know, how does the spirit pick a specific name like that out of radio signals? I don't know. I don't know how that's supposed to work, but it happened. And there was a couple other really good instances. That was one of the best ones we did.
I thought so.
I mean, it's kind of, you know, 6 of one, half dozen of the other when you say the name is very specific. But at the same time, if you wouldn't have known the name and you're asking who's here and somebody says Elvin and you write that down, once you find out that that's very similar to the name that you were getting, like even that would have a little bit of weight to it because it's similar and maybe you just didn't hear it completely clear. But the fact that you're saying that these were really quick responses,
that's why I noted them. We had a lot.
That's what makes that session interesting. Is if you can get that, then you have something.
Yeah, we had a lot of stuff that comes across, just like the last one we did, where it didn't make any sense, or we weren't even asking questions, and all of a sudden it's just spitting out random things, and I didn't write those down. I only wrote down the couple the I am here, the get out, the Elva, and the Amy, because they were quick responses to something we were asking, and it was weird.
Do you have what the questions were for those other two responses? With the
I'm
get
sure
out
I
and
do. I'm sure I do on my recordings. I have to go back and find my
Okay.
recordings, because that's how I got
believe
this.
the one where it said Amy was like, can you identify or do you know the name of somebody in the room?
Okay.
Amy.
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. I like that.
See,
It was something like that.
we
That's a
should
good
have
one.
had that. We should have had that queued up for the episode.
Well, I got to find my stuff. I had some computer issues earlier in the week where I freaked out because I thought my computer took a shit, and my head exploded, and I was running around like a madman because I'm thinking, holy shit, my computer's not working. Nothing's working. All my stuff's on my computer.
I don't believe that at all that you were acting like that. Jenny, can you confirm?
She wasn't here.
Oh, yeah, he was acting like that.
She wasn't here. She wasn't here, but I am going to add
He's like,
this.
I
Oh,
can
he
picture it.
came up and he was telling me all kinds of stuff. He was like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
thought it was dead.
Because here's how it would have went. I got to get a new computer. My computer's shot. She would have went, no, you don't. I would have, yeah, I do. No. But here's how this worked. I went upstairs and told Jake, our son, I said, Jake, the computer's not working. What the hell? He goes, I don't care. Okay.
Wow.
This is the same person
Oh.
If he had a problem, I would have to drop everything I was doing to fix the problem. I just went up to tell him I had an issue. And I don't care. So I felt really good about that.
Nice.
I can't,
That's
I
classic.
would never fly in my house.
I came down here, switched to HDMI cord, and all was well. So I had a bad cord.
Yay.
Go figure. But I was like, anyway, the moral of that story is my recordings are on the other computer that I stole the cord off of. So I got to figure that out first before I can go back. But I know I have the recordings because I saved every recording I have. So once I figure that out, we can discuss this between ourselves as to what those were. But I know the only reason I made note of them is because they stood out. The other things I got on that recording, I had a gotcha. There was some discussion between individuals. I don't know if it was you, Rob, or Amy, or who it was that had a recorder that had a piano playing.
That wasn't us.
But there was a recorder.
There's a
that
recorder
did
of
catch
you
piano
playing the piano.
But that was me playing Charlie Brown.
Correct. And I have that. I have the recording. It says Rob is playing the piano, parentheses, not good. And then it says,
It wasn't bad.
it says to compare with the other recording that somebody else heard, because the background to that one is I wasn't sure who has the recording on it, so I won't get too much involved in it because it wasn't probably one of our pieces of evidence, so I don't want to step on anybody's toes there. But it was a piano heard when we weren't there.
I know we definitely have the rock situation recorded because it was on Rob's recorder.
Yeah, I think my recorder was one of the ones in there
And then
too.
yours came in, second. And then when we were upstairs on the last night during the bat situation, we were looking at the poster on the wall with all of the gravestones, the headstones, and everybody's kind of talking about like just the fact that there's a lot of people with the same last name. It looks like a bunch of kids. Like if you look at the dates, probably because everybody shares a bathroom on the one floor. And so one person gets it, the whole family gets it, and the kids, get wiped out. So as we're talking about that, it's Rob's voice saying like, oh my God, it's like a lot of kids and they're all, kind of within the same couple months or whatever. On our recorder, there was a child's voice that said, he can see us.
That's right.
Yep. And once again, I am a skeptic. So I caught it on the headphones and I played it 100 million times because I'm like, that can't be right. And I'm like, well, who sounds like that? Maybe it's got to be one of us with that voice, but there's no way. It's a
But why would one of us say that?
Well, I don't know. But I mean,
but that's the thing that goes.
Gotta be something.
But when I hear those things, that's what goes through my head is I put
oh
it
my
in
God,
context.
who does this sound like? Or
Why
maybe
would somebody say that?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Why would Amy say he can see us? Of course he can. That's the types of things that I think of when I hear those. Just like the thing that we heard down in the basement at the last place with BJ or Danny and stuff downstairs.
Yep.
why would anybody do that? You could hear it and it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't fit
Right.
and like you said, why would somebody say
Right.
he could see us, you know? And
Yeah. And I mean,
I don't know that I ever heard that one. I'd like to hear that if
yeah, it's on one of our recorders. And I know, I mean, when I listen to evidence, it's a struggle for me just not to fall asleep.
Mhm.
And so I have a notebook and my pen, and it's also number 2, it's really hard to get a super quiet house to listen to it. Like I can't do it in the car. I can't do it at work. It's too loud.
Yeah.
I can only do it here, and I can usually only do it later at night because everybody's kind of winding down. And I mean, at first I thought, did I just sleep that? Did I just dream that happened? You know what I
I've
mean?
had that.
So
Yep.
it was weird. It was like a weird hallucination at first. And then, so I always do struggle with like, did I just put those words in my brain? And it's, you know what I mean? Like power of suggestion kind of. And now that I heard it that way, I can never unhear that. So I don't really like to tell people what I heard when I make them listen to it,
Right.
I did bring it to work and I made a couple girls.
Now, was that the third floor or the second floor? That was third floor, right?
That was the third floor. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just trying to piece that together with the hello that I got, if that would be, because that sounded like it was a child as well. Now, so I'm trying to figure if it was the same floor that maybe.
Yeah, the poster was right outside Hannah's room.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. One other thing I did have on one of my recorders is I have a bell ringing from upstairs on one of the nurses' stations, and nobody says that they rang the bell. We try to be real good as a group, tagging everything. So,
Was it a one ring or was it several frantic?
It was just a one ring, like ding, that bell that was, there was a physical bell. It wasn't like there was no bells in the building and there's a disembodied bell. There was like one of those little bells there that they have on a counter that you hit it like we have for the dog to go outside, ding. And I hear it and I can tell it's upstairs, but I can try to piece together where everybody's at. And I don't hear anybody say up there. I don't hear anybody come back down, and I don't hear anybody say, "Oh, that was me ringing the bell," which is very important in doing investigations when you're doing stuff like that, because it's different if it's you and only you, because if you did it or not. But when you have a group of 8 people or whatever, you don't know what everybody's doing, and when people start to roam around on their own, it's hard to keep track of where everybody was. Let me bring up my other thing that I have here. I've got breaths and whispers, a whistle that no one tags. I get a get out, some tapping noises. I don't know. I get a deep growl at one point, which is interesting, only because I got to go back and see where I heard that at, because I know one of the claims from Destination Fear was growling in the boiler room. So I got to go back and see if that was something that was in that area. I have a squeak that one of our other investigators did hear because they heard it and they said, "Did you hear that?" And I also had some laughing, which, if I remember right, I don't know. And the laughing, I believe, sounded like it might have been kids. So those are some of the ones I have tagged of the stuff I listened to that were my personal recordings. So that's why I have them. Other stuff that anybody else had, I can't speak for. I know that there was other experiences that we're not privileged to at this point, so we can't discuss that. But I know there was another thing that happened that was very confusing to me while we were there. I think you guys know about it. I don't remember, but in the boiler room, a lot of the locations when we go, we bring different trigger objects, and we had some cat balls that light up so that if you touch them or kick them or whatever, they light up.
We bring cat toys just so there's no confusion. Cat toys that are balls, not cat balls.
Good call, Rob. Yeah, I didn't clarify
I
that.
thought it was funny in my head, but
no, it is now after I think about what I said.
Everybody
I
got
think
really
about it for a minute.
quiet.
Yeah, we didn't bring cat balls. We bought toys that are round balls.
I was just hoping somebody clarified it, so I'm glad Rob did, because I was like, you guys
He was real scared.
What's wrong with them
They're
guys?
disgusting.
People are going, this group is
we bring
nuts.
them as a good luck
Literally.
charm. We wear them around our neck. You'll get yours. You have to nab your
Ooh.
first. You have to bag your first cat on your own, and like a Jedi has to make his own lightsaber. It's a rite of passage.
Well, if I find that McCavity, he's a real piece of shit. So if I find him, he's the first one I'm going after. He's not a nice cat. Anybody who's seen cats knows McCavity's not to be trifled with.
I want to see it, but I was told not to watch it.
I suggest you watch it because you're never going to see anything like it.
That I believe the person would agree with. Anyway, I go back to my story. We placed these toys, cat toys, in different locations to see, and we try to put them on camera so that if something happens and there's nobody there and we see it light up, we're holy shit, something happened. Several times throughout the night, people were kicking said toys, and they're hard plastic. They're not like a rubber ball or anything. So you can hear them when they skip across the cement floor and bounce off everything. You can hear. And when people were doing that, people were saying, "Oh shit, I kicked the cat toy." In the boiler room, there was a cat toy placed on the floor, kind of in between a doorway, and it was in the camera shot. We know it was there because I saw it there, and we were there for several nights, like I said. So we were in and out of there numerous times, and watch out for the ball, watch out for the cat toy, don't kick it. And if you did kick it, you could know. It was the boiler room was a small area, really rough cement. Picture old boiler room area, Freddy Krueger. There's no floor, it's dirt, it's cement that's all chopped up, it's a mess. So it's not like it's a nice, clean, nice, smooth floor where this cat toy is just going to roll on its own, whatever. You'd have to physically move this thing to get it to move. At one point, we went down there and it was gone. It was all the way up against one of the walls, one of the brick walls. And we walked in. I'm like, did somebody kick that? I didn't hear it. Did anybody kick? No, we didn't touch it. I'm like, well, how did it get way over there? Why is it way up against that wall? And because everybody was good, once again, you gotta trust that everybody's doing their part. That if they kicked it, they put it back.
Was there a camera on it?
There was a camera facing into there, but of course we don't have privilege of that said camera. However, I did have a recorder that was in that room listening. I had that recorder that was in that. I wanted it. I asked specifically for that recorder because I wanted to hear, because you can hear if somebody kicks the damn ball. You can hear it. I did not hear that ball get kicked. I did not hear anybody say they kicked it. So I found that to be a little odd. Paranormal, I don't know, but weird that it was up against that brick wall and nobody put it back where it was supposed to be. And when I asked everybody, it's not like we had 100 people in our group. I asked everybody individually, did you guys kick the cat toy in the boiler room? No. So take that for how you want. I thought that was odd that it was moved. I didn't get any other experiences in the boiler room for that being one of the hot spots, and even on some of the television programs of that being a hot spot. I mean, it was creepy, but I didn't have any personal experiences there. I take a lot of digital pictures with the digital camera and with my phone. And as I'm sitting here right now, I was looking through the pictures that I took with my phone, and they bring back a lot of memories. But the pictures, I have more out of focus pictures in the boiler room. My camera's pretty decent. All the rest of the pictures I took throughout the whole facility are focused, but the ones in the boiler room are just continuous blurry pictures, which I thought was odd. Remember the hole in the wall? Yeah, that's where that ball ended
up against that.
Underneath.
These
underneath
pictures are so out of focus that I had a tough time focusing. The rest of it, everything's crystal clear.
Yeah.
With a flash, without a flash.
Yeah. So, I mean, weird experiences. I mean, did you guys have any other weird experiences that you could think of off the top of your head that when we were there? I mean, besides
Not that I recall, besides the
tapping noises when we were sleeping?
I remember feeling kind of robbed that I didn't have any experiences. And I think at first we didn't really think we had a lot either.
No.
Because there was somebody had a bedroom on the second floor.
Oh, the one that was all set up?
Yeah, not
That's-
Hannah's. It was a
No, that
different
was
one.
Robin's, the owner. That was one of his rooms there that he had set up in there.
Because there were some porcelain figurines up on one of the mirrors, like for, I don't know, some series of figures, but one of them was a kid dressed as a ghost. And I took a picture of it and I said, I'm the only one that's got a picture of a ghost while we were here. So I didn't really have any other experiences. I mean, we apparently got some good EVPs and whatnot, but as far as a personal experience, I didn't really have anything.
Now, I would be open to going back with our group TRPD, by the way.
Yes, I would be completely willing to go.
I mean, I
To
think
go back. It's now that we know what we know, we could, develop some new techniques to go in there and
Mhm.
practice the ones that worked. It was interesting, and especially the outcome of what we got as far as evidence went.
Right. And I think if Robin has all of his cameras already in place, like he was working on, that would make video evidence a lot easier and would make setup time a lot easier, where you just have to plug you just download whatever onto a flash drive. That he was working on that while we were there, where he had cameras. Remember how they had like the REM pods hanging in the ceilings
I just seen
and all that stuff.
in the pictures.
You know?
Yeah, they're all over the place.
Yeah. This for Jenny and Brian, this location, one of the things that Robin was doing was he was wiring the whole building with cameras, because he has security cameras set up around the facility, obviously for security purposes, because people think it's abandoned building, you don't want people breaking in, stuff like that. But he has them on the floors too to monitor stuff, because he gets activity when he's in there working. He told us many stories of personal experiences where he's on a ladder and feels something or hears something, or he's had being he's there all the time. You would expect him and his wife and the workers there to have a ton of stories, because they're there all the time. We had the privilege of being there for a couple days. So you always got to remember that, when people tell you things, and to be careful that when you leave there of thinking, oh, nothing goes on there. Just because we didn't catch it doesn't mean that it's not there. And as we found out, we did find some things. Like Rob said, we didn't find a ghost. We didn't have the shadow figures. We didn't have some of the other things that are said to be there, that we were told to watch for. But I would,
the EVP session we did, I wasn't part of it, but didn't you do one in the boiler room where the cat toy was lighting up in response to questions?
I didn't do one in there. The only one I was part of was the one that was in the kitchen area or the lunchroom area that we already discussed. And then there was one up on the third floor that another person that was with us sat at one end with the headphones on and did one while the bat was flying around.
I've been seeing
Do you have any pictures of that bat, Rob? Did you snap any of that?
I have a lot of it on video.
Or the aftermath of us running around?
I have pretty much the whole thing on video. Hands flailing, shocked faces. Now, the only thing about it is I was told that camera, I always thought it had sound. Other people would review the video, so I would upload it on other computers, that there was no sound, because I never thought I would ever hear Rich scream, but
Yeah, well,
so the
it
bat,
was a scary bat.
the bat was flying down the hallway of the third floor, but it really had everybody up in arms.
You know what?
Dark in there.
It was dark, and the bat was flying like it was gonna swoop down and kill everybody, but the bats aren't gonna do that. And just videotaping everybody's reaction, it was like being just a bystander.
There was one more
videotaping the
thing.
chaos.
There was one more thing that all of a sudden I'm remembering. Remember the motion lights they had in the stairways where they were acting kind of weird? We couldn't really put our fingers on what that was
Yes.
all about.
Yes.
We started thinking it was the bat causing it towards the end there because we would watch and listen where it was at, but they had motion sensors in the stairways. And if you would get kind of like in the basement of the last place we went, Brian, remember how you were talking about, I had to get this close and then it went off and now all of a sudden it's acting weird. Well, it's the same type of thing here in the stairway. We would notice we'd get to the landing and it would never go off. Or the other time you'd barely get close and it would go off. So it wasn't like it would do the same thing all the time. Well, there was times where we'd be on a floor and all of a sudden it would just go on and nobody's in the stairway. So we're like, well, what's going on there? So, I mean, that was kind of weird, but once again, you start getting, battery operated devices or electronic devices. You never know what could be causing them to do whatever. So, I mean, paranormal or not, it was something weird, but we never did figure that out, but it was happening in both stairways. If I remember right, it happened on the one side, which would have been the east side, and then on the west side too, which is weird because I think it happened both nights. But
I remember it on the side that the piano in Hannah's room was on. That for sure.
Yeah.
Because I remember the bat flying all around in that area as well.
Right. Yeah. And that piano playing, that was something I never did get to. That was evidence I never did get privileged to listen to. So I don't know. Like I said, I have it with you playing it. And you can clearly tell for these two down here that it was a piano that was out of tune that was being played. I was under the understanding of what the said EVP that we have somewhere that was caught on a recorder, not by one of us, was a piano playing that sounded like a music playing. And none of us were in the building at the time. That was the day that we all went to lunch and nobody was there is during this time frame. So like I said, I didn't get to hear that. I wasn't able to, I just know that story. Just as I said it. So kind of interesting. So what do you guys think?
I wouldn't mind going back at all. Like I said, it's really a neat building and it's got a pretty rich history as far as what you would expect building that's supposed to have paranormal activity going on to have. We could probably, we gave other places a second shot, and if something that's been haunted or supposedly haunted for quite a long time, I mean, it's hard to get everything you need in 2 nights and 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
So I would clearly be okay with going back there.
Yeah, I didn't think it was too far of a distance to go. It was, I mean, 4 hours wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't a bad drive. You have facilities at the location. You sleep there, obviously. They have bunkhouses that were built out back, a fire pit. The bunkhouses have heat, AC, a TV. I mean, they have a shower or two. I don't know if there's 2 showers or 1 shower, but there's bathrooms. There's a little kitchenette with fridge. I mean, so you have the amenities you need there when you go, barring that you don't go when it's too cold outside, which I don't think they do anything for.
And a really nice base camp.
Yeah, nice base camp, which I was saying before. Robin was working on getting all wired in, so that all you had to do when you got there was set out your recorders and then investigate. You didn't have to spend any time setting up because all his cameras, you just turn them on and you're getting everything because he already has them placed throughout the whole building. And then at the end of your investigation, you put your little zip drive or whatever, flash drive in, download your cameras, away you go. Which I think is a great idea. I was really hoping when I read that before we went this last time that was going to be up and running. And then we found out that he wasn't done with that whole operation of setting it up. But when you're there, you can see that he's clearly working on it. In the room behind where the base camp was, it was like a AV room, had all the wires, had all the stuff all set up, TVs, the whole 9 yards. So, hopefully if we get to go back, which I'm going to say I'm going to push for, maybe not this year, obviously, because we don't know what we're going to do. Let's do some other stuff this year, but maybe when we get a plan together towards the end of the year, we plan it for next year and we can get on their schedule right away. I think we had a great time when we were there. I can't say anything bad about it. It was a good experience. It's like all of them.
It was.
Even if the whole group is a skeptic, I think it's great because it makes you dig deeper to find the truth. You don't just take a noise or something as bam, it's that. You got to wait a minute. Let's dig deeper. And I think that's the only way you get the truth out of it is by digging deeper. And I think we do a good job of that. And
so here's my actual experience that I had while I was there. We had the men's bunk room. We had the females bunk room.
This is my favorite.
And this room it's not very big, but there's 4 bunks in there and they're up against a wall. There's the AC and there's a small TV and it's late at night and I hear a thumping and it's pretty rhythmic, but it's not so mechanical that it's continuous, but it's thump, 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 and there might be a break or an offset, but I have no idea what this is. And to me, what it sounded like, and I'm only saying this because right before this situation, I had 2 birthdays and a graduation, and there was several big foil balloons in our house from all these different occasions. So it almost sounded like there was a balloon caught in a fan, or I was sure it was inside, maybe it was banging on the outside, but I'm like, I have no idea what this is. So I don't have a table by my head, so I'm trying to look for my phone, and I drop my phone, and I can't find a flashlight I had next to the bed, and this is a real struggle. And this thing's going on, and nobody's moving. I don't hear anything. Nobody's reacting to it but me. I don't know if there's an animal trying to get in, if there's an animal in the room, what's going on. So I finally find my phone and my glasses, and I turn the flashlight on, and there was me, Rich, and two other investigators in this room. And one of them was fully dressed and standing over my bed looking at me. Like, what? And I'm like this is some like really creepy serial killer or something. And I'm like, what are you doing awake? Or he's like, what are you doing awake? And I'm, done anybody hear this sound? So with the flashlight on, and this guy didn't kill me, the bunk next to me, guy was laying on his stomach, and the mattresses are covered with plastic, apparently, so if you piss yourself in your sleep or you puke, you won't mess up the mattresses. But he was kicking his leg. He was totally sleeping, but his leg was kicking up and down, hitting the plastic. I'm panicking. This guy's standing over my bed, and Rich later reveals that he's awake this whole time. And he did nothing. He did nothing. He was going to play possum. Well, I got attacked by an animal, a ghost, or a serial killer.
Here's what happened. Here's my recollection. I did hear the noises, and I thought the same thing. I was laying on my stomach, or I was facing the wall, and I'm like, what the hell is that noise? It sounds like it's outside, like something's banging on the side of the bunk out. I'm like, what the hell? Then I roll over, and then you two were standing there, and you're like, what are you doing awake? He goes, not making thumping noises. I'm like, at that point, you guys had it handled, because I knew you guys knew what was going on. So I was like, I'm not getting involved.
I almost died.
I had no idea he was standing over you until I turned
I
around.
didn't either until I turned the light on. He was right there.
I had no idea. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, that was
apparently it was only funny for me and you.
that was good. That was a good one. Yeah, I like that one. That's one of my favorite all-time stories. And I will always cherish that one and hold it close to my heart. But anyway, that was fun. Yeah. So I guess if nobody has anything else, I think we can wrap up our edition. Brian, Jenny, anything else to add or questions? What do you guys think? Believe us, or you think we're full of shit? I can't hear you, Brian. Brian, I can't hear you.
Muted.
I can't hear you.
Oh,
There you go.
oh,
There you
oh
go.
man, I was really on a roll too.
We could tell.
But yeah, my gum is kicking in, so I was really on
Might
a
come
roll.
tomorrow. So
Um, no, I would love to go. To be able to experience some of the things that you guys did, especially since you did have so many specific experiences, you kind of can come up with a game plan going into it.
correct.
Like, I would love to get to the bottom of whatever sounded like rocks being thrown.
Yep.
Because I tend to agree with Rob. I believe
too.
you guys, but
I do.
at the same time, if you have mortar falling on to one piece of the roof, there could be other pieces of other stuff, even though you didn't see it. It could have bounced some. I mean, I wasn't there, so I don't know the layout of the room to know what you could have seen and not seen.
Right.
But I would love to be there to be able to check that out because that's super interesting. And like with the cat ball in the boiler room, like that's really interesting too, because just hearing you explain it and everybody said, "Oh well, I didn't kick it." Now
And you got
again,
to take everybody's word for it that they're telling you
Right.
the
Well,
truth. You know,
and that's
so
what I was.
I hear you again. Your microphone's cutting out.
Well,
Technical
he's
difficulties.
getting situated. I know he's
Okay.
getting his other mic on. I
Yep.
just wanted to say that, I think that it is pretty common for us to kind of think it'd be a good idea to go back to a place that we've already been. And I think for a couple of reasons, you can come up with a strategy, I think, better when you're going into a place that you're already somewhat familiar with and be able to have kind of a plan for how you might want to handle things. You already kind of know the layout, you know where the things are, you kind of know the history of the building. So I think it is definitely worthwhile to go back a second time. I haven't been there myself, so I would be very excited about going. But I think even like with the spa, when we did our investigation, after going back and listening to the evidence, the thought was, oh man, it would be great to go back there because now we know these things about this particular building. So some of the stories you hear about the people who are there all the time, I think those are very valuable stories because you might get something really exciting one time you're there and hear nothing the next time you're there. It's not like something that's always going to happen the same way. So I think it would be a great trip.
Yeah, and I'm gonna even double down on that a little bit with the Farrar Schoolhouse that we talk
Yeah.
about going, and we've all said, at least I've been there 3 times,
Yes.
4 times, 3 times, whatever. I've been there, and I've said that every time we've gone, it's been a different experience.
Yeah.
It's never been the same experience. And I listen to a podcast, Haunted Road. Amy Bruni has a Haunted Road podcast that she goes and talks about different things. She had John Tenney on there, who is another guy I listen to a lot. He's good. He has his own podcast too. What's Up Weirdo? Listen to it. If you get a chance. It's just a bunch of weird stuff, and he makes me laugh, but he does a lot of investigations. Very smart guy. He even said he was on her episode of Farrar because he's been there before. And he said one thing that struck me that he said, I've been there so many times and it's never the same experience. And I thought to myself, exactly right. I agree 100%. I've been there how many different times and it's never the same experience. So you could go a couple different ways. You go back and, like you said, you know what you're looking for. Maybe you can confirm different things, or maybe you go and you have a totally different thing happen to you. So that, I mean, other than, being 4 hours away, but I mean, even that in the grand scheme of things, I don't think is bad. It wasn't that far. It's not like a big trip, but it was fun. And I think you guys would really enjoy it. I really do. I mean, it was a great experience. And I always try to get other people involved and want people to go, because I know for many years I've been trying to tell people things we find when we've gone on things, and it's hard. It's always hard until you have it happen to you. It's hard to believe or hard to understand until you actually have it happen. Once you have it happen to you, it changes things for you a little bit, because then when you're doing things or someone else tells you a story, you can go, I get it. I understand.
Right.
But until it happens to you, until you hear that first EVP, that's crystal clear, that for a fact, wasn't not anything that you said or was nobody around you, until that happens to you, it's easy to go, well, it could have been, Well, what you heard was this. Well, maybe there was somebody over there. Maybe because you weren't there. But when it happens to you the first time, it changes everything else you do and your outlook on everything else that every recording you listen to for an EVP, it changes the way you do it because you heard that one. And it's cool when you finally hear it. And I mean, the first time, my first experience was Farrar, and I had a ton of EVPs at that place. I had things swearing at me. I mean, once you hear one, it was like I could not stop hearing EVPs at that place. And the other times it was a little bit quieter, and we had different experiences. So, I mean, who knows what Ashmore could dish out to us next time when we go.
Brian, I know that you had to get your mic situated. Did you want to finish your thoughts? I know I started talking.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember where I left off? I got to the I said I wanted to get to the bottom of whatever the rock throwing sound
Yes.
was.
Yes.
And then with the boiler room with the cat toy, like you said, you have to take everybody's word for it,
Right.
that they didn't bump it. But it's interesting just doing that last investigation we did, which was my first and Danny's first. There was a part in the investigation where she felt something touch her foot, and I didn't think I was close enough to be doing that. So I was like, it wasn't me, and it couldn't have been anybody else. But then once we start reviewing the footage and we see I did bump her with my foot, just enough that I didn't feel it because of the style of shoe I was wearing. But when you're sitting there in the dark and somebody is next to you, sometimes what you think happened wasn't until you see it and you go, holy cow, I was very close to something. So like with that cat ball in that boiler room, everybody says I didn't kick it, but did somebody walk past and their heel bumped it and they didn't feel it and it rolled? And then that turns into I didn't, because they didn't know.
And that's
But
what I was trying to listen
That's
for.
completely possible, but
Yep.
there was other investigators there, and one of them had a EVP session in a group that was videotaped. And that cat ball, you really have to, you can't just like lightly tap it.
Okay.
And it was lighting up. It wasn't moving, but it was lighting up in responses to questions. In the way you would see, like sometimes when you see on these ghost hunter shows where it was in like the spirit box, it was in recession to the.
Okay.
So that was interesting too.
Yep. Yeah.
I'd like to see it.
Great stuff. And you know, like I said, I'm going to bring it up to the rest of the group at TRPD, and we're going to, I think we should set that up as one of our investigations for next year. I think everybody would enjoy that. Hopefully we'll have some other things coming up this year. I feel great that we're going to be doing some stuff together coming up soon, I hope. But great episode, guys. I appreciate everybody joining us tonight. Hope everybody listening got something out of it. It was more of a flashback for us to kind of just go over a really cool location. Like I said before, if you get a chance, visit ashmoreestates.net and check them out on Facebook. You can go to their site. You can get they sell shirts. I'm wearing one here. Whatever, right here. They got books, they got videos, whole bunch of stuff. If you go to their site, they also have evidence that people have caught that have posted on there as well. When we post this episode, I will add still pictures that I have from the location that I took, just to kind of show people what it is. And hopefully by then I can look through some of my evidence and find some of the things we talked about, the EVPs that I had and some of that spirit box stuff. And maybe we can have Gina put together a little YouTube thing or something like she did for the last investigation. But well, it's been fun. Hope everybody had a great time. This episode will be coming out shortly. You can visit us on Facebook. We have a YouTube channel. You can follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, I think Google Podcasts.
Anywhere you get your podcast.
Anywhere you get your podcast, you can find us. If you have any questions, if you have anything you want to tell us, some stories. I know that we've seen some people posting some stories they want us to talk about on Facebook. So that's great to see we're getting some feedback.
Or if you have someplace you want us to investigate.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've if you haven't caught on by now, we've started a paranormal division of the Realm. It's called the Realm Paranormal Detectives, which is TRPD for short. So we're looking forward to getting into that a little bit more and doing some investigating. So if you have any place you want us to investigate, reach out, connectedrealm@gmail.com. Until next time, everybody, see you later.
Bye.
See ya.